everyone, and a massive welcome to the next episode here on InfoSec Live of the CISO Experience. For those that don't know me, my name's Simon Linstead. I'm the host and founder of the InfoSec Live community, and I'm very excited to be talking with another of our industry's leaders today. This time it's Karim Jessani to share his journey and talk about the challenges in our industry, and of course, those important successes too. But before we begin, if you're watching this live, please do like and subscribe. We do try and make these events as interactive as possible, so make sure you also drop any questions you might have in the chat. And for those that don't know who we are, who the InfoSec Live community are, we're a social network of approaching 4,000 cyber professionals, all sharing best ideas and practice, hosted on an independent community platform. And we've now been creating content on YouTube for just under a year. I'm very excited to announce that we have over 2,250 subscribers, 5,000 hours of content viewed in the last 3 months alone. So a massive thank you to everyone in our amazing community. This achievement also unlocks a few extra features on YouTube. You may have noticed them. You've got different ways to support the YouTube InfoSec Live community now. You've got the ability to purchase a super sticker in the chat if you want to get your question bumped up to the top. And there's also 3 tiers of membership, allowing you to show your support in any way that you can. But whether you join or not, being here and engaging with our content is what really matters. That's what the show's all about. Big thank you to our show sponsor, Bramfit, for supporting the last 2 series of the CISO Experience. Link to discover more about them and their technical consultancy services is in the video description below. However, if you're interested in sponsoring this show or indeed any of our regular content here on YouTube, please reach out to me today within the InfoSec Live community. The link to join that is also on our YouTube homepage. Get my breath back. Today's guest then is Karim Jessani. Let's tell you a bit about Karim before we bring him on. So he's the CISO for Kainos in the North America region, leading the Kainos data team in Canada and the United States. He's passionate about helping organizations achieve their data governance and cloud goals and has over 2 decades of experience throughout the entire systems development lifecycle, covering data management, information architecture, project and program management, software engineering, and development. And with extensive experience with various big data management on-premise and cloud technologies for data engineering, data virtualization, metadata management, master data management, data quality, and analytics such as Snowflake, Teradata, Collibra, Informatica, Tableau leveraging cloud platform, Microsoft Azure and AWS. And over his 25-year career, Karim has held leadership roles in numerous data management assignments in private companies, as well as in government agencies. And his consulting assignments have provided opportunities to observe examples of effective data governance, as well as situations where effective data governance has seemed a little bit of an elusive goal. So very excited for this. Without further rambling from me, let me find the stinger video and bring Karim on. Hey, Karim.
Hey, Stephen, how are you doing?
You can't call me Stephen. You can't get my name wrong.
Simon. I see Stephen private chat, and I'm like,
I'm only kidding.
Already somebody.
You can call me what you want. It's fine.
Simon, how are you doing?
I'm good, actually. I'm very good and very appreciative. I know you're having a super busy couple of weeks, so very appreciative for you to come on and share your journey and insights with the audience today. Before we get into that, quick shout out to the massive amounts of people in the chat again. Hey, Chris Foulon from Breaking Into Cybersecurity. Renee from Texas. Been a long time, my friend. Great to see you. Stefano. Who else have we got? Ephraim. Precious, I've seen in there. Just want to give you all a special shout out. Salunio. Yuri. Thank you for making these so interactive and engaging. And you'll be pleased to know I'm now going to be quiet and let Karim tell you a little bit more about himself other than my breathless intro I did for him a couple of minutes ago. So Karim, over to you. Please tell our audience a bit about yourself.
Sure, Simon. I have approximately 25 to 30 years of experience. Started off with the mainframe, so I'm aging myself quite considerably.
I'm with you.
Right? I know. Started off with financial institutions, then do consulting, strictly in the data realm of how to basically manage or move data from source to target systems. The most difficult word, data migration, has just, upped my juices quite considerably. How to do it, but more importantly, how to do it effectively, right? Because in this day and age, I've come to realize data is now the new oil. It's an asset.
So. Yeah.
Right? And organizations, Simon, want to view a 360 view of the customer. They want to understand how to leverage that data, right? As an example, I deal with a bank. I've dealt with them for 40 years, right? Wouldn't it be cool if they knew when I was in junior high, I had my first bank account, they have all my information. At 18, they send me a note to say, okay, you're 18, you're eligible for a car loan if they have that 360 view of a customer, right? Rather than me going in, it's so painful, right? To a bank, fill out all the forms, this, that is just nonsensical. Now, from the other side of the aspect, if they make the customer journey more seamless, but
Yeah.
ensuring that they know and I know that their data is protected 100%, we're laughing, right?
I completely agree, and I think a lot of the problems historically, I mean, for me, definitely, it was more around the fact that a lot of people didn't have any idea of what was going on with their data for a long time, and I think, I mean, that in itself, whilst the seamlessness of that, I think, is amazing. I'm also a little bit hesitant on giving up so much of my own personal information, but that is just a Simon foible, perhaps.
No, I think it's 100% what's even in Canada right now. I was reading a statistic, very important one, and they said that 89% of the Canadian population will never deal with an organization that has had a breach.
Wow,
So,
that
from
high.
that perspective, yes, right? Banks or financial institutions in Canada, from my experience, have been very reluctant to move their data out of systems that are not secure,
Yeah,
right? Because you have to take into regulatory consideration, right? Like an example is right now, I'm dealing with an insurance agent, right? It's an insurance company. And that insurance company has multiple sources of data and they want to have a data platform. So they came and said, okay, how are we going to do this with all this mainframe data? Our resources are going to be not available, right? Because lack of resources, because who knows COBOL this day and age with
sure.
IMS and everything like that.
Yeah,
So they said, okay, what are we going to do? So coming in, doing that current state, Simon, and making them understand this is what your data is, and this is how to securely put it on to a recognized platform is key,
yeah,
right? Ensuring that it's zero trust model, right? Leveraging an enterprise model and making sure that it's a tried and tested model, right? Why invent the wheel,
yeah.
right? That's my biggest thing is that I see organizations consistently coming up to me. An example is we were chatting and I mentioned to hospitality industry, right?
Yeah.
And worldwide, Simon. And they came and said, okay, we need an audit because we're messed up. I don't know what had happened. We have data in the cloud. What do we do? I go in, looking at the current state, understanding that they had a defined system, Simon, okay, completely defined, properly done BI reporting, but it was on prem. So a system integrator told them, we'll put it on the cloud for you for $8 million. They were like, whoo-hoo. 100% we'll put it on, we'll save so much money. Little do they know, with no governance, see, you're laughing because what happens if you just lift and shift, but if you do it on Azure or whatever the case may be, and you rewrite all your processes in scripts on Azure,
Yeah.
one called script 5, called script 7, called script 10, what happens, right? It's utter mess. It will work the first week, maybe the first month if you're lucky. But upstream, downstream effects of it, Simon, are incredible.
I suppose you end up lifting and shifting your problems alongside it, do you?
Worse, because
Yeah.
now they can't go backwards. No reporting is available, right? Regulatory concerns are issue, right? So basically, they wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock, running around with their heads cut off, chickens with their head, because they don't know what to do. They take one day to try to analyze the problem and fix it, and everybody's scared to touch the code. You can't do that, right? It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. That analogy, though, Kareem, it reminds me of I've got 6 children, as you know, and running around like a headless chicken is like my house at the morning at school run time.
That's
Just,
too funny. I know, right? But having a
where's
plan
my
of
bag?
attack,
Where's my bag? Yeah.
but having a plan of attack is key, Simon.
Yeah,
Right? Right? Simple. A
absolutely.
simple example, right, is that just off the top of my head, I'm going on vacation. Okay. next month, climbing a mountain. Okay,
Nice.
Mount Kilimanjaro. Don't even ask why it's like that. My daughter said, "Let's climb something." I said, "We're not climbers."
It's a lovely idea.
I know, but we're not. If you're a climber, that's a different question. But Simon, we're not climbers, right? So
Have you got
if
a
you ever
plan?
want to know, yes, that's the thing, right? Me and my wife both devised a plan to say, what do we need, right, to ensure success?
Yeah.
What are the prerequisites? Do a current state analysis of what we have right now, right? Now, if you come to our living room, it looks like we're climbing Everest,
You got
right? With the
carabiners and harnesses and
I'm telling you, right? The backpacks, the boots, just to make sure that the 9-day expedition is seamless, right? To make sure we understand what the weather is like, train for that, but also account for that, right? Understand what to do in terms of availability. You know what's going to happen,
yeah.
right? You've seen YouTube videos. It's not as if you're going into a situation where nobody has done it. This is countless people have done it, right? You learn from that. In the same way, that's how I approach data, right? In projects to say, okay, what's your current state analysis? And it's like bread, it's a recipe, Simon. If you don't
Yeah.
follow it, then you know what? I'm sorry, but it's not going to turn out, right? If you forget the flour or if you do something incorrect, it just doesn't work, right? And clients come to me and say it's not working, and I'm saying, okay, let's take a step back, right? What's your vision? What's your strategy? What's your governance model, right? What basically is your operations? And we're best of all, Simon, your organization and culture have to change, right? You have to understand and change that culture to say data is an asset, right? We understand it to be very secure and we take serious care of it.
So whose responsibility within the organization is it to do that, to ensure everyone understands that?
The CISO, or basically it's the role of both the CISO and the chief data officer to make
Sure.
sure, right? It's a combined effort or a partnership. I take on both, right? It depends on your organization, but you have to do that. And it starts up from the bottom, not at the top, right? But everybody from the top, if they're not applicable to that vision or they don't see that vision or they don't align to it, then the people obviously reporting to them will not align to it,
That's
right? They're
very
going to say,
true.
you know what, my manager doesn't care. What do we do?
Practice as you preach, isn't it?
Password, yeah.
Yeah.
Right now we're moving data, right? Like you said, I'm very busy, right? I'm architecting the solution. We're moving data, and our chief security architect is saying, okay, Karim, it's production data, encryption, right? Why do you want 5 people to access this data? What are the roles of these 5 people? And can we have it to 1 or 2, right? And how are we going to encrypt? But not only encrypt, if it's production data, how about masking it, right? And making sure that at rest and in transit, the data is encrypted. All these different scenarios come into play, right? And I'm like, I got a good person now as an architect who tells me, okay, because I had the same thing. So now if we're both in line and if we both understand each other, it makes life a lot more easier, right? As compared to me coming in to an organization and they're saying, oh, we're stuck, we have a breach. I said, okay, can you help us? I said, sure. What's your security model? Oh, we don't have one. Okay. what is your password? Superman 123. Okay, there are issues like this, right? You
Yeah.
can't do that. You should, at least from a regulatory perspective, you just should not do that, right? And it's not something that is a one-off, Simon. I see it consistently from organization to organization to organization, right? That security is not taken as serious as it should, especially from a data perspective, right? And that's key.
How how do we change that?
I'll tell you, making sure that there are people who understand the value of data in your organization, both from a business and from a technical perspective, right? Blending that knowledge, because the thing is this, I can talk about keys, primary keys, foreign keys, referential integrity, circular relationships till I turn blue. Okay. But when the business does not understand what I'm saying, then it's like talking in French, Russian,
Yeah.
Italian, whatever it is. It's just not going to work. So ensuring that you articulate that vision to both IT and the business, because it's a partnership between the two, right? Understanding that there's a governance model, there's a data owner, a data steward. Because I've come to organizations and they said, we're not the owners. I said, hold on here. I'm just helping you massage your data. I'm your partner, I'm your facilitator. Okay. I don't care about your data or what it is, to be honest, right? I'm going to help you show what to do with that data and maximize its potential. You're the ones who know your data, right? You know the fields, you know the business, you know the business rules behind it, you know the workflow. Now I'm helping you to articulate that workflow in such a way to make sure it's compliance from a regulatory standpoint, as well as not handcuff you, because that's key, right? Because the
Absolutely.
business will say, Simon, oh, you're going to come in, you're going to give us all these rules, and we can't do anything, right? You're going to stop everything. Like business is going to stop. And I
Again,
said,
it's
no.
back to what you just said a moment ago about being able to understand what the business's objectives are and what's
Yes,
important and what isn't.
yes, and articulate it yourself in such a way that it's a partnership, right? And that's what I do, and tell them that, you know what? We're both in it to accelerate your journey, not to stop it and not to decelerate it, right? And if your data governance strategy is not an accelerant, it's like putting gasoline. That's how I describe it. If it's not an accelerant, you're doing it the completely wrong way, right? It should be an accelerant. It should help you with your organization, not like stop you in your tracks and, oh gosh, this guy is going to come in or this person's going to come in and do nothing, right? So from that perspective, what I do is go in, look at your architecture, right? Ensure that there's a PIA to be done, a TRA to be done, and ensuring the fact that this is what you can do to help things in your journey for having data as an asset.
That's a very good point. We've got a question coming actually from
Oh,
Yuri.
cool. Tell me.
Yuri, I hope you're doing well, my friend. Good to see you in the chat as always. Breach and attack simulation tools that you'd recommend. And we're looking for a
Breach.
product. So if we can only come up with ones where we're going to get a referral commission on any
That's what
recommendation.
I was going to say, right? Huh? That's exactly what I was going to say. See, I deal with data, right? So from my perspective, I look at data and ensure the fact that that data cannot be breached, right? Ensure the fact that it's encrypted in such a way that even if it is, it's garbage,
Yeah.
right? But in essence, look at the question you just got right now. This is cool. So I hate life, but some parts of it is really good. Look at Renee's question. How do you get developers to take security serious as part of your process?
Thanks, Renee. Great
That's
question.
phenomenal, right? Because what happens is you go into an organization and it's just nonsense, right? It's utter code. You have 5 versions of a data field, really, right? The name is copied 5 times. Why? Because the developer doesn't have access to their architecture. That's first and foremost. I will never blame the developer, right? I've seen it time and time again, Simon, that they have limited tools and they're not able to see what is around them. If you have a
Yeah.
current architecture and show them, okay, this is what I need, because they're not out to get you. They're out to maximize their
Absolutely.
code,
Yeah.
right? So helping them, making sure that they're part of the agile process, making sure that they have access to the tools that are required, accelerates it substantially. And you got a buy-in from the developer then. And he or she does not feel like a developer. They feel like an active participant in this whole process, right? To say, okay, you know what? We want your input because you just developed something else last week and you will know the upstream, downstream effects of this current change that is in the backlog, right? And then showing them the architecture and saying, you need to capture it from here, this column, not from here. And they're like, why? I've always done it from here. I said, no, Your golden source of record is there, right? And they're like, how did you know? I said, well, it's called data architecture, right? You view it, making sure it's proper. But at the same time, they don't have access to it, right? It's a lost art, unfortunately, right? A lot of companies will say, we don't need an architecture, you don't need ER Studio, Power Designer, whatever the case may be, right?
Do you,
And
what
understanding the fact that that's the case.
What about you see more and more firms outsourcing their development work? Not just outsourcing, but outsourcing to different countries as well. I mean, that in itself brings its own challenges with security, surely, because I don't see how you can embed those values and educate
No.
those people.
And also another thing is exactly what you said, Simon. You hit it right on the head. How do you embed the values that you have in your organization,
To someone else's.
right, to
Yeah,
somebody else, right?
you can't.
No,
No.
no, because I bring with myself a passion on data, right? I make sure the team that I bring in to a customer has that passion and can deliver that vision, because that's what the customer wants, right?
Yeah.
In the same way, there are organizations that show you the A team and going to deliver on the C team. No, because you're not going to get that value then, right?
No.
With the current place I'm in right now, they really honestly take data seriously. That's the best part, right? I tell
That's the biggest
my
battle, isn't it?
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is this, it feels honestly, I always tell my colleagues that I feel like I'm on a vacation and I'm getting paid for it because of the amount of fun I'm having, right? Because it's a challenging, sphere where I'm in, right? Migration, nobody wants to touch. Data
No.
governance, nobody wants to even think about, right? But if your organization values that, oh, you've hit a home run, man.
It's
Right?
exciting. We've got another
Oh,
question here from Stefano. Look, here we
of
go. Let's
course.
bring that one up. Stefano, so do you think that the increase in cybercrime is because business companies, etc., don't take it seriously,
Yes.
there we go, or are there other factors? I think that's the big
Well,
one.
no, because honestly, look at Simon. Imagine one thing, okay? 25 years ago, the crime was still there, like it is now,
It'll always
right?
be there.
When have you ever heard the mainframe being broken into or being cracked or being breached? Never,
No.
right? Because companies put in a lot of effort into processes, governance, and standards,
Yeah.
right? Now they've said, okay, we're going to do agile and we're going to say, forget that. And I go in and say, okay, agile, it's a process within your agile process, right? Security is key, right? Now it's not DevOps, it's DevSecOps, right?
Yeah.
Security is from the beginning all the way to the end,
I think from a
right?
job role point of view, if you go from DevOps and put a sec in the middle, you get an extra 100 grand a year as well.
Exactly, right? You're like, oh, my resume looks good, right? That's what I have in my resume, DevSecOps. And people are like, oh, this is good. He knows what he's talking about. I'm like, I just like the word, right? It's a cool word.
It
But
is.
at the same time, you have to incorporate security into your process, right? Because how is the developer, Simon, going to know what to do, right? What input do they have, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, I was trying to read something else and
Me
speak
too,
to you
man. I
then. Yeah.
like this. Me and you
Difficult,
both
isn't it?
caught this one, right?
I'll
Huh?
let you read it out. I think businesses taking security less seriously isn't the root of the problem. I think that in most organizations, security leadership have done a
Yeah.
poor job in explaining the value of security. That's a good point.
Exactly.
It's a very good point.
Very, very, very
Thanks, CAC.
great point, right? In that businesses don't know the value of security, don't know the value of data that they have, and don't realize the impact of that data if it gets breached,
Yeah.
right?
I think
Which is not
like
a
you
good
like
thing.
you said earlier, it's the companies that do understand and do value the data seems to be the ones taking it seriously. And also back to your
Exactly.
first point, which was around the opportunities of having decent data and the opportunities that brings, not just in financial services for home loans or, vehicle loans, but for everything in life.
Exactly, right? Also, the fact that how do you understand what that value of data is from a monetary perspective, right? Putting security on top, but ensuring, again, like you don't handcuff organizations or the business, right? Because they want to, make money,
Yeah.
right? And look at what Knack said, right? In terms of how do you go about measuring the security of any security program, especially when security is generally measured against the negative, right? Which is true. What I say is when you look at a program and when they incorporate security into that program and how successful that program is the measure of the success, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
understanding that, you know what, it's not a hindrance.
It's an enabler, isn't it? It's a business enabler.
Exactly.
I
A
think
hundred
more
percent.
more companies are getting to see that now. I mean, it again depends what industry you're in, who you're dealing with. I mean, if you're dealing with any federal suppliers in the US or you're dealing with government contracts in the UK, it's super important. It becomes you have to have check or crest. You have to have these things to even think about getting in the door. And it'd be nice if that spread out a bit wider to different industries, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And understanding one thing, Simon, if you're an industry, if you're a company or an organization that basically takes security as a granted, right? Breachers or hackers will figure it out, right? And
Yeah,
it's a small community, or it's a community that will talk to each other and say, you know what, let's target organization A because we all know, right? Their IPs are public on the net. You do a DDoS attack, whatever it is you can do, right? Go in for a SQL inject and you get all the data, right? Instead,
absolutely.
you go in to say, you know what, nobody can get into our system. Try and good luck, right? And that's what I tell organizations. I tell them, what is your current repository of your applications? Do you even know what you have, right? What is end of life? What is end of support? Let's
Very
fix
true.
these small issues. You'll have the biggest impact from a risk perspective, right?
Do you know? I don't know how many CISOs have said to me over the last 3 months that if you get the basics right, you've
Yeah,
nailed you've nailed
yeah,
95% of the problems in the organization. Unfortunately, and I won't moan about vendors too much because, as I mentioned at the start of the show, I am looking for a new sponsor. However, silver bullet solutions and marketing in the industry hasn't helped with that, I think.
no,
And that seamlessly leads me on to a comment in the chat from someone I know very well, who's Robert Rhodes, who's the sales director at ThreatGen over in the US.
wow,
And Robert says cybersecurity is so complex and has such a large number of points to secure. Most people inside and outside of the industry really don't know or understand what a cyber program consists of. And I think you're right, inside and out, definitely. And just to give you a bit more about Robert and ThreatGen are a gamified learning platform that I absolutely love. And it goes back to probably 30 minutes of the last 33 of what we've been talking about. Whilst it's been about data governance and risk, it's about people, right? It's
yeah,
people, process, technology, but it's the people bit that is the link in everything you've said, in my opinion. Whether speaking to the C-suite, whether speaking to the developer team, speaking to the architects, it's all about that, isn't it? And it's about building trust and relationships with those people. I'm losing my voice. Look, too much talking.
no,
Thanks,
but
Rob.
you're right, right? It's so true because you got organizations, you got vendors who say, okay, I have a product and it's going to take 6 months to implement. It's so cool. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but 6 months to implement a product? It's so cool. It's going to do ML, AI, blah, blah, blah. No, right? You're going to pull off or you're going to understand.
I love that.
It's
No.
like 6 months, right? Like, what is your thought process by thinking that I'm going to say yes to something like that, right? You're not
It's
going to
got
get
it's
the
got it's got
agreement of a
AI in it, you
business.
said. Why
Yeah,
wouldn't you why
yeah.
wouldn't you say yes?
That's what we have ML. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, do you know what that is? Do you know how you get it? It's not like an Excel report that you go on Excel, right click, create chart, and it's going to create a chart for you,
Yeah, it's not like that.
right? No,
I mean,
right?
it goes back. I mean, look, we've got Cax jumped in again with another seamless comment to keep us on that vein, saying we need to move away from using fear to explain the value of security. We can't continue to just scare business into taking it seriously. And do you know what? I also think you can relate this to the education process within the teams within organizations as well, because it's very stick approach with a lot of the
Yeah.
training and the awareness training
No,
out there at the moment, where perhaps a different approach, more collaborative approach, perhaps would work better. What do you think?
That's what I do, right?
There
My
we go.
current client right now, Simon, it's a complete collaborative effort. We're a family. We go in as a partner. We're both a partner in this data, right? And how to make a data platform. Educating the client to say, okay, this is how you need to treat your data. And they're like, okay, perfect. And then I tell them, okay, let's do a current state of that data. Then they realize, oh gosh, in our comments field, we have this, 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 this. I said, okay, we have two approaches. Either we delete them from the source or we encrypt that field. What is your preference, right? And they're like, oh, thanks for letting us know. This is what we need to do. But so at the same time, like you said, educating them, right? Because once you treat a person how to fish, then they're off to fish, right? I can
Absolutely.
go on to better, bigger
It's a
things, but
great
because
analogy, that one. I love that analogy.
but it's true and it happens so often, right? Within my career span that I say, okay, this is your data standards. Oh, these are good standards. I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. Okay. When I move data into a platform, C underscore N, I don't know what that is. Is that contract number or what it is? Right. And that happened a couple of days ago. We're moving data into a platform, into an enterprise data platform. And they're like, okay, can you tell us what C underscore core N is? I said, okay, bread recipe. Let's start off with the first basics. Profile your data and
And forget the
discover.
yeast.
Yes, you forgot something, right? So, what is C underscore N? And I said, okay, let's profile it. In it, we had Toronto, Des Moines, New York City, Los Angeles, C underscore N, city name.
Of
So
course.
I said, okay, now we're going to call that field city name. Can you just do that? I said, yeah, that's what I intend on doing. Every single column in a platform
Spell it
should be
out.
business centric. Yes.
Absolutely. Completely. Well, it's like having a disaster recovery plan that you can't read or understand or know where you've put,
Thank
isn't it?
you. Right? And leveraging then a BI tool, whatever it is,
Yeah.
Tableau, Power BI, whatever it is, your heart contents, Cognos, if I'm going to age myself considerably now.
It's all right. And
But
the worst thing is, I knew what you were talking about. I just pretended I didn't.
I'm telling you, right? Now they're able to have that self-service approach, right? To say, okay, we can access this data, which we know is our data,
Yeah.
right? We've controlled the access to it, right? And I've showed them how to do that. Now I can take a step back and say, okay, next system. Let's, this is running on autopilot. Let's go on to the next system, which is cool then. And it's so satisfying, right, Simon, that you say, okay, you don't have to worry anymore. The data is secure, big bang, and it's already in Workday or whatever the case may be from a target standpoint.
This leads me on nicely to a story I got told a little while
Tell
back.
me.
It's a bit like a fisherman analogy, but not. And it's about what you said about being clear on what the underlying goals are, whether that's from a business perspective, a security perspective, or how that security or how that relates to the security from the business goal, as it were. And I've shared my life story with you. I spent many, many years chasing my idea of success at the time, which was flash cars, boats, and flashy watches and money. And I got told a really good story, and I'll share it with you. It's about I've been there for my honeymoon, Bali. Actually, went to a couple of places, Seminyak and Hanging Gardens of Ubud up north, and it's an amazing place. But these two, I'll use American tourists because that's how I got told the story. They go to this lovely little restaurant by the beach, and they're eating this amazing fish. It's just beautiful. It's the freshest fish I've ever had. And as they're eating it, the fisherman comes in, and he's wheeling his cart, back and forth. Third time he comes back past the table, the bloke calls him over. He goes, "Hey mate, come over here, come over here." He said, "This fish is amazing." He said, "Where do you get it?" He said, "I go out and catch it every day." He said, "I'm telling you now." He said, "This is the best fish I've ever had." He said, "Have you ever thought about opening your own restaurants?" And the fisherman said, he said, "Well, no, not really." He said, "Well, look, once you've opened your own restaurants," he said, "you could then afford to buy a fleet of boats." He said, "which would get even more of this fish." He said, "You could then become a wholesaler and an exporter or an importer of the fish all over the world." And what would that mean? Well, you'd have millions, you'd have all these things. He said, "Okay." He said, "Then what?" He said, "Well, once you've done that," he said, "you could probably sell it all off at some point." He said, and then you can move to a beach, retire, and just go fishing every day." I just thought, yeah, that really resonated with me because it's losing sight of the goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think we see that. I know it's a tedious link to security, but there is a lot of that with the noise in the industry that we see that takes away from the fact that security is there to facilitate the business.
Yes. Right. And it's not a deterrent in any way, shape, or form. I 100% agree. Right. Once you have that commonality with your executive management, it's very, very simple after that.
Yeah.
Right. But to get to that point is sometimes a big challenge.
Very much so. You have to tell a better story than I did. So talk to me about your biggest successes over the last few years, if you can, that is,
Of
without
course,
disclosing anything.
I'll tell you. Super easy.
You're reading Cac's comment, aren't you?
Data is often, yeah, he's, you know what? I have to link up with him
Let
man. This
me
guy
do
is
this
like,
actually. So I'll leave you to talk while I multitask here. I'm just going to bring
yes.
LinkedIn up, and if it's okay, I'm going to share your LinkedIn profile,
Oh,
Karim. Is
most
that all right?
definitely.
Thank
Oh,
you.
please do.
Thank you
That
very
would be
much.
a pleasure.
Because I know we have a real broad mix of people watching, from CISOs down to those trying to break in, and it's always nice to be able to offer people connections. So I'll drop
Yes.
this one in here. This is Karim's.
Awesome.
And
So
oh, hey, Will. I didn't know it was you. Will, nice to see you. That's no
I'll
wonder there's
tell
such
you.
smart questions and comments. It all makes sense now, doesn't it?
That's too funny.
And as you said, Will, rather than call you CAC, data is often the forgotten asset. In today's age, it is the lifeblood of most organizations, but it's often thought about only in a regulatory lens rather than a critical asset. That is a very, very insightful and good comment, I would argue, Karim.
Yes. Now, the biggest success story, I would say confidently.
Although Aaron said, damn CISOs. Aaron's having a hard time with his boss today.
Yes. What I've done is we went to a client site, and it was a consult when I was in my consulting times, right? Which I'm still am, right? But with a full-time organization. It was one client I had a few years back where they were having numerous challenges moving their data, right? So I'm like, okay, let's take a step back, right? This is it's not going to be possible. We've tried everything. We have different sources, and we just can't do it. I said, how are you approaching things? And they said, okay, we're coding this, we're moving this, and I said, okay, take a step back. I told them, Simon, now I'm in Canada, right? So we have a telecom company, right? So when I want a phone, right, I go to a telephone company and say, I want a phone, here's my data
Yeah.
plan. Okay. So I told them, you're actually coding this thing to move data across. Yeah, that's what our developers have told us. Our architects have said we need to code to move the data. I said, but you're a healthcare company. Why are you coding a tool to move data when you're a healthcare company? Wouldn't you be better off putting your money and your resources to your own business? Yeah, but this is what our developers told us. It's a lot easier if we go into Python and R and move the data. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start building my own telecommunications company because today I want to buy a phone, right? So I said, hold on now, right? But at the same time, right? Unfortunately, I wasn't that direct, right? I am very direct, as you know.
Yeah.
I'm
That's why I
very
like it so much.
transparent, and it sometimes puts me in a lot of trouble,
Know
right?
that feeling. Yeah.
So it's frustrating to see. So I said, okay, I've used a special tool. I know, like, growing up, right, from a developer, you have certain things that you love and you gravitate towards. So I unfortunately gravitate towards certain specific tools.
Of course.
So I said, have you used this specific tool? And they said, no. I said, okay, you have a team of 30 people. How long have you done this for? 1 year. I said, what's your success rate? So it's challenging. We're still continuing the process. Says, I have 4 people. Give me 2 weeks. I'll be able to move your data. And they said, are you sure? I said, yeah. I'll do a subset, right? I won't do all 50 because that's production,
Yeah, of course.
right? 40, 50 subsets. Out of the 50, I'll choose 3, and the most 3 difficult, right? And they're like, no. I said, okay, hold on. Let me try and see what happens. Worst comes to worst, you've lost 2 weeks. Big deal. Okay. Simon, in a week and a half, we did it. Right. And like I said, it's a recipe, but you have to make sure that you do it diligently, right? You can't just take a lift and shift approach because
And it's
you have to.
knowing, use the analogy, it's knowing what ingredients to have in that mix as well, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
right? And you have a target system like Workday, which is completely different than a relational system like, let's say, SQL, Azure or SQL. So understanding what the nuances are, understanding what your current state is, and making sure that you tell the client, I take your data very serious. You have these columns that have a lot of PII information. And because you're a multinational organization, which I will answer the other question,
I saw
right?
that. Yeah.
To say if you're a multinational organization,
This
I've
one.
taken into laws into consideration because you have these customers within these organizations. An example is Canada, is that when you want to store data in Canada, your host country, like where you're storing it, your data center has to be in Canada. Hence, now, as of 2 years ago, Azure has a data center in Canada. 2 years ago only, right? Before then, banks will never touch Azure or even GCP or even AWS. Like you have to have a data. So making sure you understand the nuances of each country, right? And making sure even if you have a central data warehouse, the biggest part will be to connect data from different countries, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be cognizant of what you're connecting and how you're connecting it together, right? Taking laws into consideration. You don't want to do anything
So
nasty, right?
going back to Yuri's question then, would it be law and regulation driven from the top then? Is that where you'd start before you look?
Exactly, but also from a current state analysis, right? To say what countries are you dealing with?
Yeah.
Because each country is different, right? GDPR, and you got European laws, you got Canadian laws, you got the Patriot Act in the US that
Yeah.
says if any data goes into the US, any data, okay,
Yeah.
you are allowed, the government is allowed to touch that data, right? Exactly what Will said, right? It is
Yeah.
extremely important to understand because from a Canadian standpoint, companies in Canada will never put their data in the US
No.
because
But
why would they?
but then it's also moving away from big companies and data migration as end users.
Yeah,
How do we know if we've gone through the US? You know, it's impossible, isn't it, from a personal data point of
oh
view?
yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, right? But ensuring that when you're dealing with an organization, they have those considerations in mind, right? And that's where a good CISO comes in, right? To make sure from the top they're understanding what the organization is and they can bring that experience to that organization, right? Because a good example is Simon. I was reading your LinkedIn yesterday. One of your connections
But at
said,
least someone does.
well, I was reading your posts, okay? And it was funny, right? In that one there was a post from a CISO, and he said that I just came across a job posting, and it said the person that applies to this role needs to know C++, Java, VB,
Was it a CISO role as
C
well?
Sharp. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm like, and he made a mockery out of it,
Yeah.
right? Because which CISO would know this? Then you got other people chiming in and saying, like, my point of view or my
Yeah.
minimal, like I have experience as a developer, right? So I know these things. It's like riding a bike, Simon. You'll never forget it, right?
No.
But at the same time, you're cognizant of all the decisions you make because you know these things beforehand, right? So
Absolutely.
from that perspective, then that's applicable, that job description. But if the job description is like, you're a CISO and you still have to code, I'm like, I don't think so,
I
man.
think I
Your
had
resources are wasted.
I had a really good conversation. I won't mention who it was with, but another CISO is coming on the show soon, about half an hour before we jumped on, actually. And we were talking about the ever changing or the changing role of the CISO, along with the fact that
Yeah,
the industry itself is in its infancy still. And we've got 3,500 products, which all do about 10 different things. It's like, in such a state of flux and growth, the industry at the moment. However, as things move forward, this CISO's opinion was that maybe CISOs won't be around in 10 years because of that transition. There's been this huge focus on needing people like yourself, security leaders, to come in and build all this out. He seems to think that it'll change in a few years' time to become more of an integrated role within the organization as regulation and companies you deal with, third parties, become obligated and regulated to provide certain aspects of it. I'm not sure whether I think that's going to happen, but it's definitely an interesting talking point, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, right? To understand it. But I've come to the realization that a valuable organization will basically look at what you have and the experience you can bring to it, right? And then develop upon it, right? And say, okay, we need this person because of the experience or the amount of technical and business acumen they can bring, right? That's key. And coming back to Will's point, it just brought me to a very, very key uh, thing that happened to me about 6 months ago. A graduate student came to me and said, Karim, we're like, Kainos is one of the biggest premier partners for Workday.
Yeah.
Okay. So a Workday graduate student came and said, okay, Karim, can I look at what you guys do and can you mentor me? And I said, yeah, no problem. Right. And coming back to Will's point, what I do is I've instilled in her security issues that come into first and foremost into her mind whenever she's doing a project. Once you start doing that at such a relatively starting off going
Yeah.
into the
Habit
industry or
habit
a low
forming, isn't
age,
it?
yes.
Yeah.
Now she's coming to me and said, "Oh, has the person done a scan of their database?" I'm like, "Woohoo!" That's the first thing I would say, right? You're learning kind of thing because that's the last thing you'd get from a developer
Oh,
when
absolutely.
they're
Yeah.
looking at a data field, right? They're just gonna, develop this thing, do the business requirements, like they'll rely on other people to do it. Whereas she's coming in from a business standpoint, currently with data, and said, okay, what is the metadata of this? Shouldn't they have any? I said, yeah, hey man, go back to the client and say, what is your metadata? If not, then you get the metadata for them, put it into that system. And it's like, yeah, because I can't understand the data without it. I said, thank you, right? You can't be guessing anything in
No.
this day and age. You should not be, right? So distilling that and ensuring the fact, even at a CISO level, to ensure that you talk to everybody within the organization, no matter what level it is, right? To put security as foremost in their mind whenever they approach a problem, right? Or develop a solution, right? And for me,
That's
it's data
that's
security.
the that's the big ask, isn't it? That's what we need to do as an industry,
Yeah,
the education piece. And we've
completely.
got 5 minutes left, and I want to go back to something that we talked about actually the first time we ever chatted, and
Tell me.
it's stuck in my mind. And I'll tell you why it's stuck in my mind. So you know my background. I've worked for myself for like 3 decades, no, 2 decades, pretty much, three nearly, on and off with a couple of employed roles. I find the thought of working for one company quite difficult because I'm not used to that. But I think a lot of that is down to maybe not finding the right culture. Now, your background, you're a consultant working for yourself for a long time. And then what
Incredibly long.
and then what happened? So do you mind sharing that? Because I think it's
Oh, that
really
is
relevant.
so funny. Yes. So 25 years of working as a consultant. Okay. And a recruiter came to me and said, would you consider joining our company? I said, no. System integrator, that's the last thing I would do. Right. I've worked for Deloitte as a consultant, as an external consultant. I've worked for IBM. I worked for Wipro, Substack, Accenture, CGI. I've worked many companies, right? And it's just that the culture does not resonate with what I can do, right? And I've chosen the other side to say, okay, once I'm done, right? Or from that contract
Yeah.
or that engagement. So now this person says, no, we are a different company. I said, how so? First of all, we really value your input from an employee perspective. I'm like, I'm not sure because I'm from North
I haven't
America,
heard this
from
before.
Canada. Yes, thank you. Right? No way, right? It's just not going to happen. He said, just can you just talk to us I said, sure. You're going to have to break my hands and feet. I'll just tell you right now. Again, I'm very direct, right?
Yeah.
This company is, and I said, I have to have fun, right? And for me, like, fun is defined in very different ways, right? Like, I have a lot
Absolutely.
of stress, but it's fun stress to me,
Yeah.
right? And so I have all these criteria in my mind. And then she says, just talk to us. So I talked to the VP, the leader, a number of executives, and it all came down to one thing: their value for their customer, but before that, the value to the employees,
Yeah.
right? And that is huge for me. And the fact that this organization, they just don't say data governance, they actually stand by it, right? And they encourage me, which is very unusual, to speak to other organizations about data governance, right? And to accelerate your performance. And I said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I could not say no to it, right? Hence,
And
my
how long have
hands
you
are
been?
free.
How long have you been there now?
You know what? Believe it or not, a year and 3 months, right? And people had said, because as a consultant, you're always a consultant. You never
Yeah.
hire a consultant because they'll leave the next second they find another opportunity, right? Which is 99% of the time. I'm the 1% because I am having the time of my life and I don't think it's going to end. I don't honestly,
You're
if it's
definitely the
continuing like
smiliest.
this,
You're the smiliest, happiest CISO I've spoken to for a long time,
thank
Karim.
you.
So something's right, isn't it?
That's what I mean, right? Now you understand where my passion comes from. I get very upset. I get annoyed by an organization if they don't listen to me, right? Or they don't take things serious because I deal with very, very sensitive data prior to this current
Yeah.
company, right? I dealt with healthcare data, assault victim data. It's because I have secret to clearance, right?
Yeah.
And so they had to move it to point A to point B. And it's unnerving, Simon, when you see like just the security not being taken serious. And I'm like, Bud, how can you can't be putting data like that in the access database. Like it took me a week, believe it or not, Simon, honestly, just as a side note, to recuperate from that. Like I had to go to therapy and talk to my wife, man, and say, you know what? I don't know what's happened. Like I just came across this stuff, happened to be browsing as a consultant. I had access to a drive. Oh, I have access to a drive today accidentally, right? Because they ran some script. I'm like, what's in that drive? Double click a DBT file. Suddenly I see all this data. I'm like, do you guys know you have this data? Yeah, we know. No, it's not supposed to be in access, like you should not have it in it. Like there's a full stop to that, right? Like because anybody can double click it, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, it's password protected. I said, no, there's a lot of industry wide tools that are trialware, you download and it's full access and it will take away that password in like seconds. You just have to press a button called remove password. It's not a hacking tool or anything. It's called remove password. You press it, no, a button opens up and says, which DBT file do you know? You point to it and it says 5 seconds, password removed.
I hope there's no
Read.
nefarious characters watching this. I'm conscious we've got about 4 minutes left, and there's a couple of points in the chat I want to just bring in.
Tell
Robert,
me.
thanks for tuning in and watching this. Just going back to the comment about the future role of the CISO, he thinks risk officers will always be in the C-suite, but a CRO may subsume an independent CISO. It's a good point. Like that. And the last one is from Yuri, my friend Yuri. When your employees are on a vacation, is there any kind of data leak prevention strategy? Because when they stay in hotels or restaurants, their data can be sniffed by hackers. That's a good point as well.
Yeah.
Don't go on holiday.
No, they don't access production data on that holiday. Why would
No.
they go on? Why would they access any data on a holiday? On
Yeah.
vacation, right? For us, okay, like the company I'm with has a strict policy
So just
about
no access.
when you're on vacation, you're on vacation, right?
Yeah.
And that's the first time that's happened, by the way. Okay, Simon, I was Mexico, and my wife said, You're not taking your cell phone like work one, or you have your home, you're turning it off. No, hon, I need to do this. My VP emailed me and said, Bud, you're turning off And I said, no, you can
You're not. It's
text me
because you've
while
worked
I'm
for
there,
yourself. You've worked for yourself for all those years, Kareem. It's just unnatural to do that.
right?
And funny you should say that. We went on holiday for the first time in 5 or 6 years this year. We went to Corfu for a week. And I did turn mine off and I didn't work for a
Yeah.
week. And I got more stressed out with my children than I did work.
No, for me, it's the
That's
opposite, right?
another story. But
Yeah,
there's
no
one more
problem.
question in here that I want to bring up because I'm keen to move into consulting, but I'm staying clear of the big four. Wise move, as I don't think I will get the room to breathe and grow at my pace. Any advice for someone making that transition into consulting? Great question, Will. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. You know what?
You need
Target
to have a
companies.
chat with Will because
Yes,
he's a really
reach out
nice
to me.
guy. Yeah, I'll
Reach
connect
out
you
to
up
me, Will,
afterwards.
at the
Yeah,
site. It's not. It's I can put you in touch or whatever. I can give
thank
you
you.
pointers because I was in the industry for 25 years, right? 25 consistently, but it's because of data, right? No, companies in and out will contact you once you do it right the first time.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm doing two things at once. Look.
No. What a pleasure of a chat it's been, Simon.
It's
I'm
love.
telling
I
you,
knew it
man.
was going to be a good one with you today,
Absolutely
Kareem.
lovely. You know
Because
that?
every time we've had a conversation, I've ended up coming off the call with a big bright smile on my face,
No,
which
but
is
I've
amazing.
never done a live, right? That's was
Have
my
you not? You've
first
not done one
fear.
before?
No, I don't do
No,
it. That's
no.
one of my principles. I
Yes.
will
No.
not do a live. I'm telling you, I will. I was like, and you convinced me. I was like, you know what? This is going to end in disaster. I can see
It's not.
something
It's not. I don't
happening.
think you've shot yourself in the foot or lost your
Oh, I
contract
hope
yet.
not, man. I hope not, right?
Well, I
But
think
yeah,
it's been
no.
a generic. It's been a generic chat, hasn't it? I'm going to have to wind things up, and I'll tell you why. I'm 2 minutes away from. I've actually got another meeting in 2 minutes. Really bad time management. We can talk about time management next time you come on because I need some pointers on that.
Woo.
But I've got another CISO coming in for a chat about being a guest in the future, so I don't want to keep them waiting because I know you guys are super, super busy. But Karim, this has been absolutely amazing. Really, really loved it. I want to stay in touch as well. We'll have to catch up again after the show. But for those who haven't seen it in the chat earlier, and I'll drop it in again. This is, he says, delaying tactics. Hold on. This is the link to Karim on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
So please do reach out. And for anyone who hasn't got mine, I'll just bung mine in there as well. Hold on. Any final thoughts before we wrap up, Karim?
Oh, you know what? I have to say one thing, Simon.
Please.
It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you.
And this will continue. You know what? Sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. I'm telling you, you're going to get a lot of recognition, a lot.
Well, do you know
It's
what?
been, you deserve it, okay?
That
Because you're
means a lot.
bringing something out that is very important and that needs to be brought out.
Karim, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Everyone who's been in the chat and engaged, again, thank you so much for making it such an interesting show. I think actually we've had more people in the chat. It's been steadily going up each one, but Karim, you're obviously a bit of a superstar. You've brought a few people extra in with you, but everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to have a slurp of my coffee, get on to the next meeting. Karim, you've been an absolute gentleman. See you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. See
Bye.
you. Thank you.